This story begins with a powerful emotional memory. A 5 or 6-year-old child sitting at the dinner table, eyes flickering toward the empty chair that always stays empty. It isn't just a missing seat. It becomes a symbol of what's missing inside. The child doesn't know how to name the ache. They just know that something isn't right. We follow this child through small, ordinary moments soaked in silent questions. Why doesn't he come? Is it something I did? Does he love me at all? But these questions never find a voice. The child senses that asking might upset the mother, or worse, lead to answers they aren't ready to hear. The father's absence transforms into a permanent presence, a shadow that follows the child everywhere, at school during Father's Day events, during bedtime stories, and even while watching cartoons. It's a silence that screams louder as the years pass. As the child grows slightly older, the silence grows with them. It settles deep into their heart, not as a moment, but as a way of being. As the child enters early adolescence, they begin to wonder more about who their father really was. The mind tries to hold on to any fleeting memory. His cologne, his laugh, the warmth of his arms, or even the sound of his footsteps. But these are just shards of memory, not enough to form a whole. The child starts asking questions. Where is he now? Did he ever want to stay? Do I look like him? But every conversation about the father becomes a tightrope walk. The mother might respond with, "He was complicated," or "Let's not talk about him," or sometimes just with silence and a forced smile. The more the child searches, the more they realize they are being protected from the truth. But they don't want protection, they want answers. With every door closed, resentment quietly builds, not just toward the father, but sometimes toward the mother for not telling the full story. The child begins to internalize a dangerous belief. If no one wants to talk about him, maybe I'm not supposed to want him either. But they do, deeply, desperately, and that contradiction begins to split their heart in two. As the child grows, the painful act of comparison becomes impossible to ignore. At school, friends talk about their dads coming to football games, fixing bikes, or helping with homework. The protagonist listens, nods, laughs along, but inside, something twists. Moments stand out. Sports day at school where other dads cheer in the stands. Parent-teacher meetings where only one chair is filled. Birthday parties where friends are picked up by both parents, while the protagonist waits with just one hand holding theirs. Even teachers or neighbors might casually ask, "What does your father do?" A question that slices open an invisible wound. That's when the whisper of unworthiness begins. Maybe I wasn't enough to make him stay. Maybe I'm not lovable enough. If I had been better, maybe he would have wanted to be here. The pain isn't always loud. It's a quiet erosion of confidence, a slow leak of self-worth. One day the child looks into a mirror, wondering whose face looks back, because half of them still feels like a stranger. When reality becomes too painful, the child begins building an imaginary father in their mind, someone successful and noble, someone who had no choice but to leave, someone who secretly watches from afar and wishes he could come back. This fantasy becomes a refuge. At school, the child lies. "Oh, my dad travels a lot for work," or "He lives in another city. We talk sometimes." These lies become a comfort, until they don't, until they feel like betrayal to the child's own truth. Deep down they know the man they're describing is not real. Then comes a new kind of pain, guilt. Guilt for still wanting to love him. Guilt for defending someone who never returned. Guilt for blaming themselves when they shouldn't have. The emotional weight begins to take shape. Confusion, shame, hope, and bitterness all tangled in one. The protagonist may even write imaginary letters to this dream father, or look for him in the faces of strangers. And then comes the painful contradiction. I miss a man I never truly knew. And somehow that hurts even more. The teenage years hit like a storm. Hormones rage. Identity is questioned. And for someone growing up without a father, this phase becomes a mirror that exposes deep unhealed emotional fractures. The protagonist navigates insecurity around their body and self-worth, confusion about how to be loved or accepted, and distrust toward authority, especially male figures. The term daddy issues is often thrown around lightly, But here, the story confronts it with emotional weight. It's not about attention seeking, it's about validation hunting, the desperate desire to be seen, to be chosen, to be told, you matter. The protagonist may begin seeking compliments from people they don't even like, dressing a certain way to feel noticed, engaging in risky behaviors, not for thrill, but for worth. A growing distrust in stability takes root. If a teacher is kind, the protagonist doubts their intentions. If a friend offers loyalty, they wait for betrayal. Why? Because the first man who was supposed to love them didn't stay, and that becomes their emotional blueprint. As romantic patterns emerge, the protagonist starts falling for people who are cold, distant, or emotionally unavailable, not because they enjoy the pain, but because that kind of love feels familiar. They fall for those who don't text back. They stay with someone emotionally distant, hoping to earn affection. They mistake inconsistency for passion. Why? Because it mimics the father who was never fully present. A fear of abandonment becomes obsessive. They cling too hard just to avoid being alone. They tolerate disrespect, hoping the other person will stay. They apologize for things they didn't do, just to keep someone close. Others go the opposite route, becoming overachievers, straight A's, the best employee, the perfect child, all in the hope that success will fill the void or prove they were always good enough to love. But no achievement brings peace, because the wound isn't external, it's emotional, and it ends with a haunting realization. I keep begging people to love me the way he never did, and it's breaking me. By now the protagonist has developed a loud, unforgiving inner voice, an inner critic shaped by years of rejection, silence, and emotional neglect. That voice whispers constantly, "You're too much. No one's going to stay. Why would anyone love you?" This internal narrative becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. Even when real, healthy love arrives, the protagonist doesn't know how to hold it. They push people away preemptively, thinking, if I leave first I won't have to feel that pain again. If I ruin it, at least I was in control. Relationships become minefields. Emotional closeness feels suffocating. Vulnerability feels dangerous. Even kindness makes them suspicious. The saddest irony, deep down they crave love more than anything. But now love feels unsafe. They live stuck between longing and fear. This emotional damage plays out differently across genders. Daughters may seek protection and emotional safety from romantic partners, often falling for dominant, older, or controlling men. Not because it's romantic, but because it replicates the father they never had. They confuse control with love, obsession with care, constantly wondering if they're too needy. They become experts at emotional camouflage, smiling through pain, shrinking themselves, staying nice just to be accepted. Sons face a different struggle. The absence of a male role model causes a crisis of masculinity. Some turn to aggression, dominance, or emotional coldness. Others become emotionally numb, ashamed of their vulnerability. They bury it beneath silence. A deep fear of not being man enough begins to grow. While gender isn't binary and every person's response is deeply personal, the absence of a father touches identity, self-worth, and emotional safety at the core. Eventually the protagonist begins to notice repeating patterns: failed relationships, emotional panic, clinginess, jealousy, overgiving, or complete withdrawal. They begin connecting the dots. I've been dating my father emotionally in different phases. I fear intimacy because I never learned what it looks like. I either smother or run, because I don't know how to just be. Their emotional blueprint, their template for love, was built without the most important piece: emotional safety. They begin to realize the problem isn't that they're broken, it's that they were taught love through abandonment, and now they're trying to rewrite that script with a pen they never chose. But now that pen is finally in their hands, and with it comes a powerful truth: it's not my fault, but it is now my responsibility.